Hi, this is Halbert again, and fortunate enough to have with us here today David Deutsch. He's one of the great copywriters of our time right now, and he's actually, why don't you tell people a little bit about where you specialize and what kind of copy you do?
Sure. I write for publishers, big publishers of books and newsletters like Boardroom, Rodale, Healthy Directions. A lot of it's in health, a lot of it's in consumer stuff. A lot of it's direct mail, although of course it's more and more, on the web these days. Do work with information products, entrepreneurs, things like that.
And in case you didn't know this, when you work for Boardroom Press and Boardroom Reports, and you work for these people, these are the whales of direct marketing. So this isn't to be glossed over. You're talking about they only hire the creme de la creme. So we're talking with a very serious high-end copywriter here. And oddly enough, which we were talking about a little earlier, one of the most sane and normal-based copywriters I have ever met, but a terrific guy. We ask kind of like a series of questions that we like to ask all the really, top copywriters, and a lot of it is kind of like an homage to my father. And so we'd like to know, where did you first hear about Gary Halbert?
Gosh, I think I heard about Gary first, a guy that I was sharing some office space with. And he was getting the Gary Halbert letter, and
the physical letter.
Yeah, This was way back, and I was just starting out on my own, and he was getting the Gary Halbert letter, and Gary was giving a seminar in in Key West. I think he was just starting those seminars, and he was having some copywriters on faculty, and the guy that I was working with. He said, you should call him and, and see about being in the seminar. And I had a friend of mine who knew him, Bill Royal, who invented the pseudo FedEx envelope. He said, you should have your friend Bill Royal call him and, recommend you. And, of course, this was like, this was never going to happen as far as I was concerned. But Bill called and put in a good word. And I pick up the phone one day, and it's that voice. It's Gary Halbert. And, of course, he says, you probably know, he sounds just like he writes in his newsletters. It was like talking to his newsletter. And it was, it was just, if I had met, Leonardo DiCaprio or something, I couldn't have been more in awe of the fact that I was actually talking to Gary Halbert on the phone, and he was inviting me to come to Key West. And,
that's terrific.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that's part of the letters and stuff like that, but what was the first thing that you can recall that, it might be so long ago, that stood out and made you go, wow, this guy really knows what he's doing, he's really the man when it comes to marketing and learning from him.
Well, so much of Gary was so transparent in terms of what he knew and in terms of the truth of what he knew. The kind of thing was just you read it and you went, yes, that's right. And, a lot of it, I think, was the psychological insights where, he would talk about human nature and about, the whole thing about the model and the heroine and, and things like that. About the starving crowd and about, why no one could pick up this model, but someone came over and whispered in her ear something and they went off together, and it's because he had said, promised her cocaine or something like that. And, of course, that Gary's shocking way is just to get you to realize you've got to know what people want. You've got to get past this superficial level. And, I can tend to be very intellectual and very, very good at putting words together and making the words sound like they should sound and making them sound like, copywriting should be. And turning a phrase. And Gary really taught me to do more than that, to really get to the psychological needs of people and really resonate with people on a deeper level. And he was just such an example of that.
Great, terrific answer. What was the most recent? This is part of our what we call good practices. We're trying to tell people to keep, so that everything's fresh. So we like to ask the top marketers and top copywriters, what's the most recent tactic, technique, trick, whatever you want to call it, that you learned and changed a little bit about what you do that helped improve your results?
It's interesting. I think one of the things that I really started doing more, and this is really maybe more of a psychological thing than a copywriting technique itself, but really to spend more time, and this isn't really a, like some marketing trick or something like that, but really to spend more time thinking about the market and thinking about what I'm about to write, and really kind of using certain envisioning things, envisioning the success of the product, envisioning the person going out and buying the product that I'm writing to.
And how that whole process would be,
yeah,
how they would
and
probably
really
feel doing it.
Yeah, how they'll feel, how it's going to look when the checks start rolling in for the, for all the orders, how the person's life is going to be improved by buying the product. And, it was something I always kind of knew about, but never really, took the time to practice. I'd sit down and write, and I know I should do that stuff, but, and, just really started doing that, I think changed a lot.
Great. Okay, we're trying to take the Gary Halbert letter, and we're trying to poll everybody and say, look, at one point, of course he stopped writing because he passed away. So, but we're trying to take it a little bit beyond that. And so we're always asking the top copywriters like you, and say, what is it you think that we should add to the site now that that might be missing, that are like newer components of marketing and stuff like that?
Oh man, there's so much. There's two things that I wanted to that I would mention in that. One thing is probably not what you're really asking, but one thing I learned from Jay Abraham is that it's one thing to learn to read someone's work and understand what they're teaching, but it's another thing to talk to someone else about what they got from that person. And I think you're doing that when you're doing these interviews, but to hear, someone else's, what they got from Gary Halbert, what was their big, insight that they got? How did Gary Halbert, change what they do? And all of a sudden, maybe something that I kind of passed over that didn't really strike me, but in the way someone else says it and talks about it, I, all of a sudden I have this real aha realization, or as Jay would say, it dimensionalizes, the whole thing.
And you might, somebody else's description resonates with you in a way that somebody else's description didn't.
Yeah, or how they even put it to use and really used it.
You mentioned two things. Was there another?
Well, the other thing is, of course, all the stuff that's going on now. There's so much with, with video, with pay-per-click, SEO optimization, and all of these things have an inherent, of course, copywriting component to them.
But we need to take it to that next level,
right,
to show them that and show them the connection between it.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, wish is my command. We shall do that.
Okay.
If you can remember a specific technique you maybe learned, or that that Gary taught, you might have learned it from someone else, but that Gary taught that you actually use and probably still use today. And it could be, I know there's a lot of them. It could be like, do you use grabbers in any of your stuff, or do you use, like the dollar bill letter, or do you use, pre-recorded message, or any of those types of things?
As a copywriter, I guess I really use more Gary's copywriting, the actual, words on the page, than the marketing, I won't call it gimmicks, kind of demeans them a little bit, but marketing techniques. So, Gary's, and it's, kind of come into my style, and, Gary's directness, if you're looking to improve, your figure, your lot in life, your financial situation, this is going to be really important news. Just that directness that he had of talking, and the logic with which he wrote. Everything. This followed this, and by the time you were done, you had this chain of logic that was so powerful, and I really got a lot of that from him, and the simplicity that he wrote with.
Great. You got a good Gary Halbert start? We just like to ask this, and don't worry, this we might end up having to cut out, because, and put into the X-rated section of the site.
Oh gosh. A good Gary Halbert story. Certainly nothing X-rated. I certainly have a lot of fond memories of going down to Key West and Gary. You remember Gary North?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Gary insisting that Gary North, who's this very conservative economist, wear this Rosicrucian curly, wig, and we're all just walking down Dumont Street or whatever that main drag was,
Duval.
Duval Street, and just going into places and just having a good time, and as you say, I tend to be this nice conservative, not making a big scene copywriter, and Gary just in addition to teaching me about about copywriting, I think taught me a lot about just living and just enjoying life and living a little more freely.
Just out of my own curiosity, when you were down there, was that when he was had his place in the Harbor House, or was that the big brick building down
Yes,
near
he was
Duval
in
Street?
the big building, although it may have been before. It may have also been before that, but yeah, I remember the brick building.
I lived in there for a while too.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
wow.
and then he put the sign College of Millionaires and stuff
Right.
like that. In fact, I have the
Remember that.
College of Millionaires tapes and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Good times.
That was great. Yeah, it was so amazing to see Gary. Someone get up there and say, "I've got these problems in my business," blah 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 blah. And Gary would listen, and a couple of the other people on the panel were talking, and Gary would say, "Here's what you got to do," and it would just be like, "Wow!"
That was, by the
bringing it all
way,
together.
one of the happiest times of his entire life was during that period.
Yeah.
He had his
I can
boys.
imagine.
He had his boys down there in boats, and he was just happy as could be at that period. And I want to say, I don't know if everybody would know this. When we say that David's, a real conservative, not real out there guy, I mean, literally, doesn't have a course, even though Harlan and everybody is trying to get you to mentor and teach and stuff like that. So I just want you to know this is a big win for us to be able to get David Deutsch on interview, because he is so under the radar, and I really recognize that you're doing this in honor of my father, and I want to thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've gotten a lot from him, and it's been a pleasure knowing you
Yeah.
these years.
Thank you very much, David.
Sure.